Months after the coronavirus put the world on lockdown, statistics about who is getting hit hardest are still pouring in. According to Forbes, the pandemic is negatively impacting women across the world more than men. And here in America, moms, Black Americans, and educators are emerging as some of the most vulnerable as the widespread financial fallout from the pandemic continues. For more, I'm joined now by Heather Long. She's an economics correspondent for the Washington Post. Heather, welcome. Great to have you with us. So can you lay out what you found to be the most troubling facts about what's happening to American women some 7 months since the pandemic upended our everyday lives?
Well, we knew that women were hit harder than men in the spring because women work more in those service sector, those restaurant, hospitality type jobs that just plummeted, as your last segment showed with that female store owner who just had no work for 7 weeks. She wasn't open at all. But what I think is really alarming is 7 months into this recovery, we just saw some of the latest data, and women are dropping out of the labor force, mainly because they have to juggle taking care of children, trying to do this virtual online schooling with trying to do a job. And the reality is it's just not working. Over 800,000 women stopped looking for work or working in September. That's just a mind-boggling number. Getting women back to work is going to be key to this recovery as we go forward. A big part of that story is going to be how do we handle childcare and how do we handle education so that women can go back to jobs.
That is a mind-boggling number and frankly so depressing. Your reporting, Heather, specifically mentions moms, Black Americans, and educators as vulnerable groups during the pandemic or continuing through this pandemic. Within those groups, did you find differences regionally? Were there some areas of the country that these groups were feeling harder hit than others?
Definitely. Some of it we know instinctively. So we just got this morning the latest look at different state-by-state unemployment numbers. Hawaii is by far the state that is recovering the slowest. We all know how devastated the tourism industry is. Most people are going camping now. They're not flying across the country to Disney World, let alone Hawaii. And so Hawaii's unemployment rate is over 15% right now. Similarly, Las Vegas, New Orleans are still really struggling. I was also surprised Massachusetts has continued to be kind of high on that list, and part of that story is the heavy concentration in education. We've seen a lot of colleges do layoffs or hiring freezes, and we're starting to, unfortunately, to see several school districts do the same. And so that's why you're starting to see states that rely heavily on education being impacted as well.
So we know that the 2018 midterms were record-breaking. America reported the highest voter turnout in over a century, and a record number of 127 women were elected to Congress. We're already seeing record numbers of early voters right now. So I'm wondering, is the fact that the pain of this pandemic is being felt more by women across the country likely to have a consequence at the ballot box for politicians who perhaps are running against candidates who are women? Or are we going to see another female-centric boost this time around in reaction?
It's pretty clear that this election is largely going to be decided by suburban moms in a way that we haven't seen since the Bill Clinton elections in the 1990s when everyone was talking about soccer moms. I think this time around, I like to call them superwoman moms. It's these moms in the suburbs who are a lot more diverse now. In the 90s, it was a very white cohort of suburban moms, soccer moms. Now we have these sort of superwoman moms who are much more diverse in their backgrounds and race, and who are trying to juggle jobs and kids and finding it incredibly difficult during a time when depression and mental health issues are also rising. I think you're right. I think this group will tip the election. Whether or not it causes a surge, I don't know of women candidates. I'm more of an economist than a political analyst. But what is clear to me is whether Trump is reelected or Biden's elected, in January, whoever is sitting there in the Oval Office is going to have to focus on how do we get women back into working and into the labor force again. Not only has the United States suffered hugely, but we lag behind Japan and Canada and much of Europe already, even before the pandemic hit, and now we're slipping further behind.
So, Heather, you say the key things that we have to figure out as a country to fix this problem are childcare, childcare, childcare. It seems like right now, with kids not in school in many places, the homeschooling situation has, as you pointed out, been sort of disastrous for American working women. Is there any plan on the table? Is there any economic plan? Because, like you said, you're an economist, not a political scientist. Is there any economic plan on the table that perhaps corporations or businesses are trying to put together just to shore up their own workforce?
Definitely. And unfortunately, this is another issue that's driving this inequality wedge that we're seeing right now in the country. You see a lot of larger firms, the JP Morgans of the world, who now actually have part of their HR department, their human resources groups, are helping to advise families on backup childcare options. In some cases, they are even paying for special babysitters or special camps where kids can be taken, or even virtual camps that are going on to try to get kids engaged during these working hours. Of course, that is not happening for a lot of workers who earn $15 an hour or less. And so I think what we'll see going forward is this real differentiation between companies that are doing that and companies that are not. I will say, as the stimulus debate happens on Capitol Hill that you were just discussing, there is bipartisan support for a large amount of funding to go to child care centers. Of course, a lot of these child care centers are small businesses, especially in minority communities. And if they go out of business right now, if they just cannot reopen, we are going to have an even bigger crisis in 2021 when we have even fewer child care centers as we are trying to gear the economy back up.
Right. Well, there's one thing for sure. There can be no economic recovery without, women being a strong part of the workforce. So, Heather Long, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.